attention to what's arising in our own mind stream. It's good to wait for the period, wait for the full completeness of the situation to occur. This is what seems to be an aspect or a quality of that when you're really doing that is it's very, very spacious. Even though what's arising might be someone's dynamic, may be very fearful, claustrophobic, full of themselves, full of the thought patterns are confused and are about presenting something that is distorted, or without maybe the person who's talking really knowing that. But there seems to be a tremendous amount of spaciousness around what is being said. This is the nature of generosity, of actually giving your attention to everything that is happening. And if that's occurring, if you're doing that, and it's more of a non-doing than a doing, it's just a being aware of that, being aware, giving your attention to the quality, the openness that is happening. Even when someone is upset with you, someone is accusing you or saying, why didn't you thought you were going to do that? They kind of have this astonished kind of scolding kind of situation. There's a tremendous amount of space around that. Unless you're sucked in by it and you're trying to defend yourself or explain. If you think there's someone there, you'll defend. If you think there's someone here, you'll promote. This is called ego. It's a very, very subtle situation that's going on. I'm going to use a quote from a famous, not famous, but well-known person right now, and you'll recognize it. Believe me. Recognize that? Make a statement and say, believe me. If someone does that, they are lying to you. That's why they have to say that. It's not, their word is not enough. They have to push something further, because they, on some level, they realize they're lying. They realize we really know that we're nobody. That's why there's so much self-centeredness going on. It's because we have to completely fill up that emptiness with something. The existentialists back in the turn of the last century, the beginning of the last century, were onto something there. When they talked about the existence precedes essence, that we're here and we don't know what this is. So we make up stuff, philosophy, psychology, radiology, ontology, epistemology, crapatology. Know about that one? Zoology is for the study of Zen. Something like that. We ologize everything, and so that we can get some kind of a handle on what this is. And my function here as a Dharma teacher with no credentials at all, I don't even belong to the Soto Zen Buddhist Association, as you may have been told by people who are trying to get you to study under them. Credentials are unreal. Ego is unreal. I'm not saying that it isn't there, I'm saying it's being said. It's unreal. It's not substantial. That's why it needs to be promoted. That's why we promoted ourselves. That's why we have these kind of what was the title of the talk?
Remixing thoughts.
That's why we remix the thoughts, because the first thought isn't best, but we need more thoughts in there about it to help us promote our agenda of somebody getting somewhere, somebody losing, somebody confused, somebody. We don't care. We'll settle for just somebody. Give me somebody. This openness, emptiness without reference point is just too frightening. Yes, sir.
Could you say more about what you mean when you say not substantial? Like ego is not substantial.
It needs to be supported by our philosophy, our psychology, our promotion, our stories about ourselves. It shows up in the most ordinary, everyday conversation. If someone says something, they'll say, "You understand?" Or "Do you understand?" Or they want to know. They want more from you. They're not willing to have your lack of understanding or apparent lack of understanding. They need to have some kind of interaction. Quite often in relationships, if the relationship you're having difficulty and it starts to settle, but it's possible that you or the other person will try to kick up more. They like that feeling of an argument or warfare. At least you're defending yourself. More?
Thank you.
Shoto.
You said we do something because first thought is not enough. When does first thought become the second thought?
Immediately. As soon as you think that's the first thought, that's the second thought. We have to start somewhere, so this is why Trungpa Rinpoche, that was not Allen Ginsberg that quoted that, that was Allen Ginsberg quoting Trungpa, just YOU. Oh, sorry, FYI. FY me. I know it's one of those, but just if you know what it is, then use that. I'm not good at sorting things out particularly. But to respond more fully to your question, we immediately are, as soon as there's anything that comes up, there's some kind of self looking for air, looking for oxygen, and it will take anything it can to hang on to its apparent existence reference point. And what Rinpoche is apparently doing, as far as I can tell, didn't have a talk with him about it, is to get you to just be with whatever's arising, rather than look for something else beyond it. It doesn't seem like much. It doesn't seem to have much in the form of ego support. It doesn't have to seem to have much nutrition, first thought, but it has a tremendous amount of space. And those who are in the arts, whatever the arts, I'm not particularly knowledgeable about all arts, but they're all dealing with the same situation: form and emptiness, emptiness and form. There's emptiness, and then we begin to do something in it. And if you try to leave out emptiness, you're going to have a clump of something that's not particularly pleasant to look at, listen to, taste, or feel, because it'll be me and what I made. Narcissism manifesting, masquerading as art. Narcissism masquerading as anything. It's showing up in our so-called politics. Self-centeredness. And sometimes we have the obvious kind, we know about that, but then there's a very, very subtle kind. Sometimes that's even more distasteful, because someone actually is using their erudition, their logic, their ability, their skill to present themselves as something, as opposed to what you are or what you're presenting yourself as. Attorneys quite often are quite good at using that to get their way or change how something looks, to get something to happen. Doesn't make them bad, just makes them attorneys. Yes.
What would be the, correct is the right word, way to describe a piece of art that you created? For that came through.
Say more. I'm interested in what you said. I want you to say more about it.
What I heard you say, or the way I interpret it, was look what I created, this great piece of art. It was kind of that feeling to it. What would be another way to talk about something that came through you?
Don't say anything about it.
Don't say
Something
anything.
something came through you, then it came through. If it really came, if it actually is manifest as what we call art, you won't be able to take credit for it. There isn't anyone. So, and there isn't any production where someone's claiming ownership or about that. It starts to already kind of not smell too good. Even so, though someone is born with a great voice or a great skill, if they kind of get off on themselves, it's kind of uncomfortable to be around them. More? Other questions? More questions about that?
Not about that, but earlier you started to tell us about what is your function as a Dharma teacher.
Point to what this is. It's not separate. So I could come up here and I'm going to give a Dharma talk. Nothing is separate. End of talk.
How does a teacher point?
By not being separate from it. And not being particularly getting a credential from that. Would you like to give a Dharma talk? Why not? Scary? A little bit. I'd say it's terrifying up here. I'm not just saying it. The terror doesn't go anywhere. It's that he, she, they who are terrorized is what begins to come apart. But the terror doesn't necessarily leave. It may be there, it may not. You're going to get your chance pretty soon. I could put you on the spot any day. I could call you.
You told me that.
I could call you at 3 in the morning and say, you're giving a Dharma talk at 7 a.m.
You told me that about 4 months ago.
Oh.
You're just digging your own hole.
How's that feel?
I've been reading every single day for 4 months.
Mm-hmm. What? Hmm?
Dude just said to have me go up.
What? You said?
No, you said.
No, I was pointing up there.
Oh, I thought you were pointing at her. She's not going to help you. she has enough difficulty with her own Dharma talks. I think. Don't you? If you don't.
Terror?
Huh?
You mean terror?
Yeah, terror.
Yeah.
A little bit of yikes. Yeah. Yikes, people are going to listen to me and evaluate me, possibly.
Is that like is that like a Jack Russell terror?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a Jack Russell terror. Yeah. They always bite. That's very funny, actually. Let's see who's not grinning. Yes.
So you talk about, you don't know if there's terror or not terror, but let's say there is terror if you're going to give a Dharma talk or something.
Mm-hmm.
If the terror is so demanding of the attention, how do you practice if the words still have to come out? How do you switch your allegiance towards what might come out of your mouth instead of terror?
No, the only place your allegiance should be is on the space in which things occur. And that's, if there's a self-centeredness there, that can be frightening. It's not to say that you can't polish and become a sophisticated presenter of anything, either art or dharma or anything. You can become very sophisticated. And so, in other words, very skilled in doing that.
Would you say that you're skilled in doing that?
Oh, of course.
Have you ever been in a situation where you were intimidated by a group and you just, nothing came out of your mouth?
Yes, in 1981. I was in front of a group of 200 people. I'm supposed to talk about Buddhism. I only found out 3 minutes before I had to do that. I wasn't able to talk. That's when I found out that knees actually do bang together if you're standing up. It's not just something somebody said. It's good if you have a lectern to hang on to. That was terrifying because of the fear of being judged by others. No matter how wonderful your intentions, no matter what, if you're in front of people who you presume are judging you, but then you find out that they're so full of themselves and they have so much going on with themselves, they can't actually see you. You could actually leave. You could actually just stand there and just look at them, and they would still be seeing what they think they see. They don't really see you. You don't really see me.
Do we really see anything?
I'm checking right now. Yes and no. So we often see what we think is out there as other beings and people in space and the world and life and death and all the relative stuff. So yes, we're magnetized by that. But the fundamental nature of that is unreal.
Anne Marie from Santa Fe has a question. She asks, why give Dharma talks if it is not important for the receiver to understand?
It is important for the receiver to understand, but it takes time for that to occur. They have to go through a lot of misunderstanding. That's what's called learning, but it's learning on a you could say a higher plane, a more refined plane than just plus and minus, like computers, zeros and ones. I look at you because that's the last time I heard that used. It doesn't mean that that's like low. It's not low. It's just that it leaves that area. So that's why we have a book study where we're studying material. That's why I invited Bruce to come and confuse you every Friday. Or not. Maybe you're following along with exactly what he's saying. Yes.
Anne Marie has a follow-up question. So, why give Dharma talks if it is not important for the receiver to understand or to check with the receiver/listener if they are connecting with what is being said, or if there might be a more skillful means?
To check with the student. I think what she's saying, she's asking, is there a need to check with the student, or is she saying there is a need to check with the student to see if they're understanding? Is that
Yeah, I think
Is that
it
what you
belongs
said?
with
the first question?
yeah,
Okay.
why
Yeah.
check, yeah, is it necessary to check with the receiver?
No, from this understanding here, no.
And that necessary word is my word, so she might want to clarify. If that's-
Yeah. You can ask another question. Yes.
But along that line, I guess it's sometimes it feels like I really want somebody to desperately understand what I'm saying, and I'm looking for some kind of feedback.
Mm-hmm.
So how would we know if someone sees what I'm intending when I'm speaking?
Did you ask me?
I guess the word would be, is it necessary for feedback from someone that we're trying to communicate?
A little bit, but it's not exactly like a little bit. But it's difficult to elaborate on the way in which that works. It's not just like, I understood what you said. That was really helpful. That was a great Dharma talk. So I want to hear. I want feedback. But the feedback that I want is I just want to hear, if I ask someone about it or if someone comes and offers me something about it, it's actually more about what's happening with them rather than what I did or didn't do. I'm always getting terrible Dharma talks. If I could give a good Dharma talk, everyone would awaken.
Are our questions feedback?
Exactly. You can tell about a person's question, the way a person asks a question. You all should be doing this, asking questions. Lets me know, and probably anyone who teaches the Buddha Dharma, about the way in which you don't understand what's being taught. More.
No, she did. She said that what we've been talking about is what she had intended. But I'm curious about the need for feedback from the person that we're having a conversation with, or a discussion, however.
The conversation is
It
a little
feels
bit.
very self-centered
What does?
to ask or need some kind of feedback.
Might be.
So if in the feedback that's given, do you as a Dharma teacher then alter what you are going to say?
Possibly. But not necessarily in the way that would be presumed. Like, I'm going to change the way I'm talking about this so people can understand better. Not exactly like that. And if it is true, which it is, that self, the ego, is unreal, then we don't have to be too concerned about it, what it's doing, whether it's functioning in this direction or this direction. So it's not about getting rid of being someone different or trying to be a less egotistical or egocentric or self-centered person. Quite often people run into that. They start to sense their self-centeredness. And rather than just be that, so that you can eventually see in 10 minutes, 10 years, that's unreal. If you're not going to be able to see that it's unreal, if you keep trying to cover it up and trying to look like you're not self-centered, or try to get rid of the self-centeredness, trying to get rid of something that is unreal, is circular. Yes?
What is real?
So I don't know. Do you know?
Is everything just processed through the six senses, and that's our world?
Okay. I'm not trying to devalue what you're asking. It's a good question. What is real? It's always getting its meaning from its opposite, what is unreal. And we have a presumption about what's real and what's unreal. But the discovery of that is your situation, not where you find out what's real or I find out what's real or anyone finds out what is real and we hand it to somebody else. On the other hand, if you have a perception of what is true or what is real, you may be tongue-tied. You may not know how to do that or how to present that until you actually realize more deeply that what is already the case. This is why we have teachings like Dzogchen or Mahamudra or the Great Perfection. There isn't anything else to do. You want some help with that?
Absolutely.
You're looking at it. We're looking at it now. When you go to your car, you drive down the road, when you look at your neighbor's fence, speaking of your personal situation, you're looking at that. And what is the delusion is what you're looking at. And that which is looking at that, that's the delusion. And the reality is not separate. And it's just a statement that it completely collapses as soon as you say it. So we continue to look at the separation, we continue to look at the thoughts arise, we continue to look at the masquerade, the shenanigans of the self-centeredness trying to be somebody. And everyone is doing it in their own particular cookbook, chemistry. Yes?
If we could see you, what would we see?
You'd see yourself. Just a way of talking about it. We're talking about metaphors and images, so another way of saying that is you wouldn't see anything separate. Another way of saying that is you wouldn't see anything because you can't see what it's seeing. Whatever is seeing, if it's true that it's not separate, then whatever is seeing if it's true that whatever is seeing is the observer is not separate or is the observed, then we're coming back to the teaching of His Holiness Karmapa, the 16th, who said nothing happens. So he was saying that from the point of view of ultimate reality. That's how it looks. So we have an insight. If you contemplate that a little bit, nothing happens. It immediately takes us into, at least it does for me, into all the things that are happening. It's like, how can you say that? Everything's happening. But that's what he's talking about. He's not talking about some other situation where nothing is happening. It's called transcendence. And what is transcended? The separation, relative truth to absolute truth.
Is it the ego that makes us think something's happening?
Yeah, self-centeredness. It's like something that can be threatened. Something like anyone, not just Shoka, but if I say to anyone here, especially those of you who've received Jukai, if I say, I don't want to give a Dharma talk today, you give it. And if you said, well, I don't know what to talk about, I say, well, talk about the 5 skandhas, talk about the 4 noble truths, talk about suffering, talk about negativity, talk about working with negativity. That's really a good one. Anybody that's been meditating for a while knows something about that. Probably know a lot more about it than you think you do. But it could be pretty scary to do that because other people who have also been looking at this for a while and thinking about it are listening to you, watching you, and you're up here with no notes. Of course, you could borrow, she writes lots of notes.
It's after the fact.
Mm-hmm. What?
After the fact. The notes are after the fact.
They are?
Yeah, because you have to say them first.
I'm saying notes. Who knows? Yes.
Anne Marie has another question.
That Anne Marie, she's quite the questioner.
She asks, as teachers, the goal is for the teachings to land. Why wouldn't we want to change up teachings to be more skillful? and
Uh,
land.
Anne-Marie, that's that there's an aspect of teaching that does work that way, but it's relative, and one may teach in that way, just like you say, teach about the five skandhas: form, feeling, perception, concept, and consciousness. So if you're teaching that, you could work with a person to help them understand that form, the actual form, is a part of our self-centeredness, and then feeling, perception, and the other consciousness parts are feeling, perception, concept, consciousness, or whatever word you want to use there. And so so you could go in and do it in a relative way and make sure the person understands. But if you're endeavoring to teach the ultimacy, if you're endeavoring to point out what this actually is fundamentally, then it may not be able to have a SAT test or something to make sure that you've got it. Yes.
Another follow-up question. As the Buddha understood more and more, he wanted others to understand more. How did he teach the mundane and the extraordinary without getting feedback from the Sangha?
Well, we got a lot of feedback. I don't know, I wasn't there. The teachings down through the centuries go through all kinds of changes. He was talking to, as it were to trust the history, he was talking to thousands and thousands of people. And he was in his teachings, as if you read them, like we've studied here, the Agamas, Majjhima Nikaya, Samyutta Nikaya. If you read those, you find that his way of teaching was to repeat something over and over and over again. Wasn't much in the way of writing things down, as far as I know, just memorizing. More question?
Not yet, no.
So I'm not taking away, I'm not saying that we shouldn't understand what the different concepts and try to remember what they are and apply them or use them. But the concepts in Buddhism are taking us on, that's why it's called broken down into sections. Well, you could, depends on what form you want to use. Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana is one of them the Tibetans use, or Shravakayana, Pratyekabuddhayana, and Bodhisattvayana. That's another three ways of teaching this. One is not right, it's not right and wrong, it's just a structure. So yes, you might want to talk about those structures and help someone understand that. So there might be, there's some conceptual model or structure that probably you could get some feedback on, or you could interact with someone around those. Yes?
She says, I am confused.
Good. Why did I say that? Why would I say? Good. Go ahead.
I heard earlier that to ask if we are understood is narcissistic and is not encouraged. Thus, how to teach without coming from ego?
It's not a problem to the idea of ego. Ego is unreal. So it's not about getting rid of it. It's about seeing that it's unreal. If you're trying to get rid of it, then this is delusion.
Sometimes when you teach, you will be on talking about something, and you say, "Do you follow me a little bit?"
Mm-hmm.
So,
isn't that asking for feedback?
Yeah.
Somewhat, yeah. That's when I'm feeling particularly lost.
When it's not doctrinal or provisional, you're pointing out, teaching, and you say everything I say is a lie. So how the words come up could sound very different, trying to point the same.
Could be.
So would you ever switch up how you're saying it based on somebody's response to do you?
I'm doing it all the time. As I've sometimes said, I don't know what I'm going to say till I come in here and sit down. It's a little difficult today because I was having my difficulty with my blood sugar, which is confusing. So I might have a talk title, but often I've forgotten what it was. I have to ask someone what it is. If they were to say, well, you were going to talk about some other teaching, I probably could talk about it. Or not, maybe I should say, well, I don't remember much about that. So we get some feedback. I mean, it's not like I occasionally ask Unyo, how was that? Was that talk? How did that? Because sometimes I'll give a talk and I'll have a feeling like it was, like, I don't know where I was even going with it. And then someone will come, oh, that was a great talk. And then other times I feel like that talk made some sense. I might even go back and even listen to it myself to see, when I say make some sense, I'm saying it came together as far as how to work with negative energy and the mind in such a way that doesn't meddle with it, that doesn't run away from it, and doesn't make it make it worse. Passion, aggression, ignorance, how to just be here and work with what arises as your emotions, ideas, memories, concepts, all the things that are coming at us and trying to, in a sense, making us feel like we are somebody. We've got to act in a certain way. We've got to do something. Our whole society, if you go out into society, your family, your friends, and have any conversation with anyone, people immediately are interacting on terms of success and failure and should and shouldn't, and they're happy to lecture you about any number of things based on all kinds of proofs about this and this and this. So this is a situation where the kind of learning that is being encouraged, that I'm endeavoring to encourage people, is to find out who you are. And all the provisional teachings are very helpful. They give us a structure. When we have our book studies 8 times a week, they give us a way of working with each other, Sangha, a community of other people that are trying to understand. You'll notice the way they're understanding something is different than that. I mean, and you can see other people's self-centeredness. Have you noticed that? You can see, if you sit down and talk for any length of time, your particular brand of self-centeredness is going to arise. This including me. I'm not self-centered at all. So you can see that. And those of you who are really close, like Unyo is with me all the time, sees my self-centeredness come and go. Wouldn't you say? Oh. So it's unreal. So you don't have to correct anything, fix anything. And if you see what this is, and you see that other people are trapped by their self-centeredness, I don't mean to simplify it too much because it takes so much work. Then you want to encourage them to see through that and relax and not fight with their world, and work with situations that arise that are really, really sometimes extremely difficult, especially if we're talking about life and death and people losing their health, or losing their friends, or losing their relationship that they're so attached to, and the way the world is working is so threatening and difficult. It's so, I don't know if you call it tempting, but it feels like we're missing something. It feels like we have to get out and do something about all of this. It's so seductive, all the politics, and not that we shouldn't do some. That's why I always say, watch the news. Don't disconnect and go to the mountaintop and shut down and separate yourself from the world. Yes.
When your self-centeredness comes up, is it reifying anything? Is it reifying anything?
Say more.
I was just thinking, earlier you had mentioned that we already know that we're nobody, and that's why there's so much ego activity. So I'm wondering if ego activity still happens, but you've seen through, what's it doing?
I think what happens is you see it and you don't try to get rid of it, and you don't add to it. You do nothing with it, and so the particular karma that is expressing itself as your life, your skin color, the shape of your ears, is also happening in terms of your mental qualities, and all kinds of karma can be showing up as that. But if there's no one there, there's no solid being there, this doesn't mean there isn't all kinds of discontinuous things happening. And some of them look like they're somebody, and then that tends to wind down, especially if you do nothing with it. If you just look at it, and it wanders away, or it dissolves. I don't mean to get too romantic about it, but it does. It's just unreal. So, but what is real And I hesitate to say too much about this because it's not exactly an experience. As I've said, experiences, there's an experience, it's gone, they come and go. This, when you see it, it doesn't go away. You see what this is, and the reality is it's not separate. Looks, I mean, everything everywhere looks like separate. The vines on the tree, the birds, the sounds, I mean, there's just, you can't count all these things, there's too many of them. I mean, you could just spend the rest of your life just counting mice. Count the mice in our house. Your life would come to an end before you finish. So, but it's so convincing that there's so many separate things. And part of what makes it even worse is those who want to control the apparent separations come in and make rules about everything. It says in the sutras, don't set up standards. It doesn't mean don't have guidelines and don't have respect for other people, of course. But when we lock down on like cement blocks between us, where there's no breathing there. We have difficulty with one person, so we want more rules there, and not so much difficulty with others, so there's less rules. It's a challenging area. Time for more questions, or yeah. Yes, David.
Is there an intimacy that happens in that situation that we're developing on the cushion?
Yeah, you mean intimacy with others or with yourself?
With those self-centered negativity over positivity.
I think so. I think that's a very good word. Everything is separate, but everything is separated because of the understanding that things are fundamentally not separate. Then there's tremendous intimacy because of the combination of the apparent separation and the understanding that things are not separate at the same time. It's called in the Indian tradition Advaita, or non-duality. This is outside of Buddhism. People have been seeing this all kinds of spiritual paths. The indigenous people, as far as we know, had an understanding of this. Shamanistic practices can have this kind of understanding, and it also can go in another route. Just like Buddhism can go in a route that's like, come on, let's come back to what the Buddha was talking about, instead of creating some kind of other structure to things that everybody should be following, towing the line. More questions around this are really good. We have them. Yes.
When we see ourselves filling up space, is there anything to do?
Absolutely, yes. Just watch it. Don't correct anything. Be a fool. Just have a willingness to just watch yourself do that forever. It's like a feeling. I don't ever have to get better. I don't have to ever improve. I don't ever have to be a person who doesn't fill up things or doesn't fill up space. I don't have to be that. I can just be this. Be genuine. And that genuineness, because we are embodied as human beings, may involve, but for the capital Y, may involve your karma. Be who you are. Be and manifest your karma. I don't say if you feel like murdering someone, go out and do that because you need to manifest your karma. That's self-centeredness, operating in an extremely aggressive, and like the people who go and shoot people. It's just like it just gets the best of them. And they're not evil. There's just extreme suffering going on, and they just can't stand the suffering anymore, and so they project the suffering that they're having out on the world, and then they go shoot it. That's how you get rid of it. If you intense projection on other, or intense projection on other, you get a divorce. Intense projection on other, you avoid them. There's just so many ways that shows up. Yes.
Is space that's seen being filled up actually being filled up?
It doesn't matter. So it doesn't, maybe not, maybe a little bit, maybe 3 gallons, but no more. You could get into if you get into that part of it, I'm not saying that your question isn't valid, but what if I respond to it in as a positive or negative or anything, rather than just saying it doesn't matter. I'm saying the area that which you're looking at is to see if something is actually occurring. And so everything, all of that is transcended. So it may be being filled up. Space is a concept of space. There's a concept of filling. There's a concept of up. More.
Does nothing happen look like movement?
Yeah. All this movement. Yes. More? Sokuzan.
I had a question about something Bruce said on
Yes.
Friday. He said, when you might remember better because we talked about it, but it was something along the lines that communication begins after conceptualization. Is that what he said? Was wondering, it's easy to understand how we can work on our verbal communication skills, but how can we work on non-conceptual communication?
So what was it he said?
He said communication begins after the conceptualization.
I don't follow what he's saying there, do you?
It just seems that
So you have to think about it before you can communicate it?
no, I thought he was saying that the real communication is beyond the exchange of concepts.
Oh, okay, yes.
And I'm just wondering how to begin to, I don't know how to say it, but prioritize or work with.
I can help you. It's not, we look for something, we look for phenomena, instead of seeing that it is the not knowing part is a completely open dimension of being. There's nothing, the only thing there is to really know is this. So go ahead.
When I'm like right now communicating with you and you're responding to my question, is there a way for me to receive the non-conceptual? Because it seems that often I'm just listening and interpreting, trying to understand what you're saying.
Is that your question?
Yes.
Just keep doing that. There's nothing to correct. Yes.
Is there anything beyond receive then?
From the point of view of the path, no. So as I've said many times, especially lately, give everything your attention, and then whatever is moving towards you, receive it. And without putting any barnacles on it. Don't put your thought patterns on top of the thing before it even gets into your craw, as if it were a sea bass. You know, you're receiving, things are coming. This comes and that comes and this is coming. But when we think about this, I don't like this, I like that, but I don't like this.
What is the communication like that you're having back and forth? If you're only receiving, what is communication?
Listening. Just receiving. You may say something, you may not. But the important thing is to actually receive what is happening. And to receive what is happening may consist of not knowing what you're receiving.
Yeah, but I don't know what to ask.
A good example of this would be go to your most intimate relationship where you think you know what the other person is saying. Your spouse or someone you're really close to, and watch through your awareness practice. Notice the degree to which you, I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just suggesting you could just bring awareness to that situation and notice how you project onto that you don't actually receive what's coming toward you fundamentally, because you think you know what it is before it even You think you know who and what that person is saying or is doing, or what their motives are, everything about you. Have a whole, practically a soap opera. Perhaps. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm saying, listen to someone as if you don't even know them, as if you've never heard. Don't attribute any past to anything. Just if you're here, if you're in the present, then you won't know what to do next, and you won't mind. Yes.
So should we always be surprised?
It's not a should thing. Like, should, damn it, I wasn't surprised.
Are surprises always happening?
Yeah, things are surprising, but they may not show up as some kind of expression of, oh my, that's just so amazing. I can't believe that person is the way they are. I thought they were this way, and here they are. You know, I'm looking at the Buddha all the time. Surprising. So I don't mean to make light of what you're saying. Yes, there's a little bit of that, but it's more of like a, maybe your head might turn a little bit, but not something you would tell somebody you were surprised, or you just might notice that things are not what they seem to be. If you look closely at anything that's if you give it your attention and you watch it move towards you, it's two things at once, and this is also called not two. It's completely bizarre, and it's absolutely ordinary at the same time. This is called, in the Tibetan tradition, co-emergence. Confusion and awakening arise at the same time. Just a way of saying it. So it's an easy way of saying it because it's a relative way of saying it. But what they're actually saying is you're looking at the confusion, you're looking at the awakening, and they're not separate. Because the no separation extends to everything you can find and everything you can't find. So it's completely, thoroughly wipes out any kind of territoriality. If you wanted to say it this way, you could say there isn't anything that isn't you. There isn't anything you don't own. You can't steal because everything belongs to you. But then the precept, if you notice, if you read the precepts, it acknowledges that. It's like saying there's only one life, which is unkillable. But it's not saying you know to go the other way. It's just saying bear that in mind, and that everything, but everything is in its own right place. And don't move anything from one place to another, like money from somebody's pocket to your pocket. Everything's exactly where it needs to be. Don't take what is not given. This is a very hard concept for me as a child thief. Even as looking back on it, sometimes I look back and I think, that was a really bizarre form of confusion, to actually think that other people had things that I needed, like money or speedball pens. I never stole one of those, by the way. Just thought about it, yes.
Is there a receiving that happens when you're the one that's speaking?
There can be, because maybe not the cause, but as you're speaking, you're actually receiving what you're saying. I sometimes say, half jokingly and the other half jokingly, is I hear what I'm saying at the same time you do. But that's why I don't. If I had notes up here, I'd be totally confused. What was the fourth skanda? Can you read that? So I'm not saying that I can't teach that. I could teach, and sometimes do. But yes, you'd be receiving your own mental mind stream. You watch your mind stream flow. You could actually learn from what you already know, you already understand. This is why it's called the Great Perfection, or Dzogchen. Because those who have worked for their whole life, or however you want to say it, and have come to some kind of fundamental understanding of what this is, that's the kind of teaching that starts to come out, like with Longchenpa. Read 3 or 4 pages of Longchenpa, and even though it's translated, you're listening to somebody who really has a deep understanding of what is happening here, and yet all he's really saying is it's already here. You don't have anything else to do. Everything, your most negative feeling thought is the great perfection. Nothing to correct, nothing to fix. No longer objecting. Sometimes we have a practice, thank you very much, I have no complaints whatsoever. The other way of doing it is when negativity comes up, say to yourself, I don't care if this ever leaves. I whoever I am, whatever this is, I'm fine if I feel depressed every morning from now on. Do it for all beings. Deal with the negativity, because there are other peoples that are pushing the negativity out with such force they're taking other people's lives. They can't stand the negativity. You could do the opposite of that. This is the path of the Bodhisattva, or the awakening being, or of someone working on the path of the Buddha. Be with all things.
What's the opposite of receiving?
What is the opposite of receiving? Not receiving, shutting down, ignoring, adding. When something comes to you, instead of that, you add a bunch of things onto it, what it is, rather than receive it as it is. Making up stuff based on hope and fear, based on wanting things to be different than they are.
In thinking about communicating without concept, I think about an exercise I do with drawing students and have done for 20 years, where they sit opposite one another in pairs and do blind contours of one another, looking at each other for 10 minutes. And especially recently, the resistance to that from the students is intense.
Yes.
And
make them do it anyway.
Right, I do.
Yeah, good.
But it's getting like I don't do this. But my question is, what is that? What is that?
It's a fear. Fear of losing control, not being in control, because we've all done blind contour drawings. Have been around for a long time. It's a very good thing to teach you. Looking at something and you're drawing something you can't see. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, but they're sitting very close and looking.
But I mean, you can't see what you're drawing.
Right.
Yeah. So you're looking at it and you're doing a contour out of feel.
The thing that makes them uncomfortable is the looking.
It's because you look in someone's eyes. There's something about someone's eyes. This is apparent all the time. You don't have to look in their eyes. You can look at the back of their head as they're walking away. But there's we're looking at someone's deep consciousness is manifesting with everyone all the time. So people can see us. We're all, not all of us, but most of us, me especially, hiding out from everything. And when someone looks at you, you feel kind of like you want to cover up, or can I put on a raincoat or something? So I think it's 10 minutes. So the way you could work with that is have people put it in a graduated thing. Say, okay, well, if this is difficult, we won't have you do it quite as long. You find that, no, I can probably do the 10 minutes. But as soon as they find out they don't have to do it, that they can do 8 minutes. Yeah, well, give me all my 8-minute people. They don't want to hear that. I'm just an 8-minute person. So you can work with that, and you're still working with someone's self-centeredness, but in the way where they'll more likely move into the awareness practice and opt for the awareness practice, which is what it is, rather than the self-centered, I don't want to do this, or the fear part. More?
I guess in thinking about it, the question comes up, is it more frightening to look at someone or to be looked at by someone, and why is that?
Is it more frightening to
look at someone?
Yeah.
Or to be looked at, or can you look at someone without being looked at? You probably can't, so it's the same.
I think you can. I think you can. One of the practices we do here, if I'm working with people where there's a couple, or people that are in close relationship, or people that are not, or just temple residents where they're having some difficulty communicating, I sometimes say, not all the time, but say, sit down and spend a minute or 2 minutes, which is a long time, just looking at each other's eyes before you start to have your discussion. And then we do it formally. You sit in a symmetrical situation, you bow to the other person, and then you look at the other person for a minute, 2 minutes, or whatever you decide ahead of time. And then one of the people starts to say, maybe when you do this, that's difficult for me to work with. And then the openness has been presented first, the receiving of the other person's gaze and the receiving of your own tendency to project onto the other person, because you're seeing the projection more than likely than the other person.
So isn't that communicating without concept? Doing that, what you just
Yeah,
described?
but you're doing it even if you're not. We're communicating without concepts right now, all the time, everywhere. Communication is what's the word for it? Rampant. Communication being the exchange, things going this way and that way. All kinds of things are happening. But yeah, that would be a kind of bring it into a form and giving it a particular structure and everything, where you look at the other person, then might be a more obvious form of it. Not really language, but something's true. It doesn't last. That's the interesting thing about it. When you look in someone's eyes, you may get self-conscious, and then you may get kind of mesmerized by their eye color for half a second, and then it may go back to seeing a silhouette, and then it may go to, then you might be looking at them and actually bail and be thinking about your grocery list, and then you look back and they're still looking at you. So could be anything like that, but all of it is part of just being here and working with others, working with ourselves, endeavoring to be kind and understanding to others, even though they may not always present themselves in a way that's easy to work with. Shoto?
Is color communicating with us, with our eyes?
Color? Yeah, we're always receiving colors, shapes, sounds. If you're in here sitting and in the afternoon and suddenly you hear a fire engine or emergency vehicle go and there's a loud siren, if you're not doing much but just sitting here and you've been sitting for a while and you're just receiving whatever's coming and going, it's very intrusive in one way, but it really shows you how wide your mind is. It's like if you're sitting facing a wall and you're not aware of the time, and you may be daydreaming, you may be maybe any number of ways of describing your state or your consciousness. There are times when someone strikes the gong and we jump, and there are times when we strike the gong and we just feel that. You feel that the spaciousness of that sound because you were sitting there, and without knowing it, because there isn't any way you can know about that, because you are that. So that's you realize you're not really separate from that sound. You're not separate from anything that's happening. That's a fairly good example of it. It happens. The obvious one that everybody knows about is music. We hear music and it totally changes our whole. It might be something where we don't like that kind of music. I got to get out of here. Or it might be something that changes our mood, brings us into a particular mood. Are we at the end? We're at the end. This is the end. You don't get to ask me anything else.
Except Oreo.
Yes. Now it's time for Oreo. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.